Let's put this new. You know, the best cell phone holder I found's on eBay. $10. It's a total piece of junk, but it holds the phone just right off the mirror. Now I put two of those straps that you like cinch up and you cut off the extra length. But I've tried a bunch of them. The sticker ones, the ones that stick to the window, junk. The ones that stick to the dash, junk. The ones that have this little fin that goes into the air conditioning vents, junk. This one's junk too, but it works. I'll give you the name of it if you want. Keep you from getting a ticket, getting pulled over. They are on this shit in certain communities. I think they get grants. I mean, you got people running dope up and down the expressway all over the place, breaking into places, stealing out of cars, and they're out fucking around with people touching their phone. It's none of that hard stuff. It's just pure money. You touching your phone? Yeah. No, here's $100. That other shit you got to solve. Witnesses. Fuck, they figured out where the money's at. Then they get the grant on top of it. Those grants, the way they work is like they'll identify some place where there's a lot of accidents. A couple kids got squashed flat as pancakes. Then the feds will come in, they'll give the states money, and the states will allocate money for like one full-time cop for like 6 months to just go out there and write tickets for this bullshit. They're really having a big controversy now over these traffic cams, these ones they put up on a 50-foot pole, and you know, they claim it's for safety, and then they catch them all using it for school zones during the weekend when the school isn't even open. So that's where you get the Democrats fighting with the Republicans, you know. All the crazy liberal Democrats, you know, are running out of money because they've given it to everybody who don't want to work. And, you know, they're getting a bunch of extra income from this, and all the businesses have left because of their crazy, nutty environmental rules. And you got the Republicans saying this is bullshit. All you're doing, this is a source of income. We think it's nonsense. So they're getting rid of them, a lot of them down here. Now I went to Chicago. I got one of the first ones for turning right on red. I had this really good-looking black female judge, really cute, man. She looked like a TV anchor. And I go in there, I've got all my bullshit, you know, I'm ready to, you know, make it look like, you know, they're infringing on my rights, these things aren't accurate, it wasn't me, you know, any way I can dirty up the waters I can, you know. And I started out, and this judge looked at me and, like, smiled. She smiled, I said, hey, it's kind of funny, actually. I said, hey, am I wasting my time? She said, you are. I said, what kind of trial is this, you know? She said, well, you know, you're not supposed to be turning right on those reds. I said, well, they just came up with this bullshit, you know? She said, I know, but I said, so what, there's no defense for this? She said, no. I said, there's nothing I'm going to say that's going to make you believe that it wasn't me. She said, nope. I said, so I might as well plead guilty? She said, yep. Oh, shit. And you know it's a big sham when you don't get points. You just get a fine. That's because they're afraid it's going to get tested someplace and they're going to get thrown out. So they know that people are only going to go through so much bullshit for fighting a ticket, and that they're probably going to get the money, which is what they're really looking for. But they all sell it under safety. And I'm not saying there isn't an element of safety to it, but it's just a moneymaker. I got one about 6 months ago going through over near Waynesboro, Statesboro. If you ever go through Georgia, Waynesboro and Statesboro both, they're the biggest fucking speed traps in the world. They have a place south of town, you know, and I lost in my divorce a couple years ago. I was coming back at night. And, I mean, it's out in the middle of nowhere. Brand new highway, you know, brand new stripes. Looks like a racetrack. And you're out in the woods. I mean, there's nobody around. There's no houses, nothing. I was talking on the phone, and I knew as soon as I saw a car on the side of the road turn his lights on. You know, he had parking lights on, and then his headlights, and then his damn overhead flashers. I was fucked. and I looked down at my damn speedometer and I was doing 77. So I pull over. He didn't even need to hardly drive. Big fat guy, nice guy. Evidently there's a law in Georgia where you have to offer to show the certification of the reliability of the radar unit. I think they have to use a tuning fork, calibrate it in the morning, and all that bullshit. So he said, would you like to see my... I said, what's that? He said, oh, it's a calibration. I said, fuck no, man, no way. I said, what'd yours say? What'd yours say when I went by? He said 77. I said, nah, it's working. I said, because the minute you turn those overheads on, that's what mine said, 77. So there's no sense in looking up a bunch of bullshit records. I said, hey, can I just say one thing? He said, yeah, go ahead. I said, hey, look, man, I just got fucked on a divorce. I mean, really got my ass handed to me. And I'm not one of these sovereign citizen motherfuckers freely traveling down the road. You don't have the right. I was fucking speeding. I'm having a bad day. You're doing your job. I appreciate you doing it. You've been very courteous. If I get the ticket, I get the ticket. But if there's a school or some shit like that, I'd rather take it, because a 77 and 55 is like 4 points. He said, well, just hang on a second. So I give him my license. He goes back. A few minutes later, comes up and hands me my license. He said, hey, you have a good day. I said, I'm not getting a ticket. He said, nah, I'm not giving you a ticket. He said, I will tell you this, though. There's a guy about 12 miles down the road. He's doing the same thing I am. He's in a different county. He said, there's no way he's going to let you go. And sure as shit, because that's the way you cut up. If you ever look from, like, Florida to get to Crawfordville, where I live, it's always kind of an issue. Even when I go down to... You're always cutting back some weird way. You're not taking the expressway, one expressway to another. It's just out of the way. Hilton Head's the same way. If you look at a map from Hilton Head, and you just go through all these towns where, I'm pretty careful about it, but sometimes you just, get caught up in bullshit. I read a book last night, kind of skimmed through it it's written by a guy named Passman, P-A-S-S-M-A-N. I spent about 3 hours, I kind of skimmed through it, but I read all the good parts of it. He's an attorney who went to Harvard, smart guy, and he spells out everything with regard to royalties and stuff, and how much the music's changed with downloads, and what's considered an album, and promotions, and YouTube, and StreamYard, Spotify, all that shit. It's really super interesting how classical music is calculated differently. I didn't really think about it, but I read in there, classical music never really sold a lot of it, even in its best days. And you wonder, I know these conductors make crazy money. Well, as it turns out, classical music, those orchestras are run as non-profits. And I never considered that. They're the total opposite of like Hall & Oates or the Rolling Stones and how they work their contracts. And as it turns out, as a non-profit, you get all sorts of donations from big companies and stuff. And in the bigger symphonies and a lot of the big places, it's just rich people keeping them afloat. There's no money in it. Yeah, which I wondered how they kept on, why you would just keep on producing. I'll tell you another thing I found out too. I bought 1,100 classical music CDs, and I've been listening to them, and I thought when I bought them, it wasn't why I bought them, but I thought, they're getting fucking weirder on the using music on YouTube, and that kind of happened to me. I bought all this supposedly royalty-free music, and then lately YouTube's been fucking me on them. It's like, what do you mean I paid for this music? Well, I'll tell you what they mean. Is it turns out these subscription music places, whether it's Spotify, any of them, when you download a stream as part of a subscription service, or you actually buy the music, it's called a tethered stream. That means there's strings attached. So even though you're allowed to download it and play it whenever you want, it's still copyrighted music. In other words, you can't use it for commercial purposes. And YouTube is considered a commercial purpose. Now, in the old days, if the channel wasn't monetized, and mine isn't monetized anymore, it didn't matter because you weren't getting any ad revenue. And then about 6 or 7 years ago, YouTube decided to run ads on channels that weren't monetized. So you can't tell now if somebody's running ads or not. But as it turns out, like with the subscription I had, you haven't. I mean, I've got like thousands of songs I use, thinking that, well, they're non-copyright, I don't need to worry about this. You need to maintain an active subscription. In other words, you have to be sending in money every month, or all those videos that you use music for are a copyright infringement because you don't have an active subscription. So basically, when you get pitched on YouTube and you don't want to have the hassle of getting your videos fucked with, you get one of these places just to avoid the problem. I mean, it's worth $15 a month not to have them up your ass all the time. And then you find out that, well, that's basically a lifelong subscription, because you could have 10, I probably have 30,000 videos. Not 30,000, but I mean 3,000 videos, or 13,000 maybe. Yeah, I bet I do have 13,000 videos using their music. And I have to keep it active. It's not that big a deal. But people don't know that. When you're buying copyright-free music, it's called a tethered download. That's what it's called. There's strings attached. And YouTube pays the lowest ad rate there is available for reimbursement. And it's all the way they calculate this stuff. See, in the old days, it was album sales and what constituted an album and all this kind of stuff. Well, now, nobody's buying albums anymore. You're buying one song that you like, and that's changed things. Now, you can still buy an album, but the calculations, there's a million ways people are paid. Where the song's able to be used, where it isn't. Ringtones, like 26 cents a piece. Stuff like that. Commercials. The ad rate's different in foreign countries than the United States. It's lower in the UK, Canada. It's pretty interesting too. And most tours lose money. Traveling expenses are so high, and it's kind of, the candle's kind of gotten burned at both ends now. I mean, it's hard to get your music out there. It's not like the old days where RCA would take you under their wing and promote you. And I never realized, too, the producers and the engineers, how integral they are to the success of an album. Now, there's a famous classical pianist, Alfred Brendel. I just bought his box set from a guy in London, and it was called The Turnabout in the Vox Recordings, and he doesn't even really like talking about it. Brendel's an interesting guy. I mean, most of these world-class pianists are like in a league of their own. They were raised from families with money, and were banging away on the piano since 3 or 4 years old. He was not. He was raised from a non-musical family, and it's just amazing. And he'll tell you to this day, he's not the greatest music reader in the world, which I believe that's almost like learning a foreign language when you're younger. But I kind of got intrigued with the guy. He's a real gentleman. He's still alive, actually. And in the old Vox and Turnabout recordings, as I said, there was never really any money in classical music. So back in the day, there was a slight demand for these people. And two companies, Vox and Turnabout, went and they'd say, hey, we were interested in recording an album of yours. And he'd say, you interested in that? And it's like, yeah, we'll give them, how much are you paying? It's like, we'll give you $500. Like, nah. It's like, we'll give you $1,000. It's like, okay. And basically, it wasn't any big elaborate deal. These companies would go out, they'd set up a recorder, and it'd be like analog recording, not stereo. Later on, they got to stereo, but it was an inexpensive way to record a pianist. You may play Beethoven or Schumann, or you never really know. Whoever they requested, what was ever popular, it didn't really matter. But it was kind of an archaic, old, antiquated way to record something. It wasn't considered really legitimate professional, like a big company behind it. Well, over the years, it's like that was kind of the poor man's recordings of, concert pianists, right? And now after all the years, sound has progressed, sound engineering, that kind of thing. And if you compare old Vox and Turnabout recordings to like the newer ones. Get out of the way, bird. Vox, Turnabouts recordings, it's like night and day, but in a way, the old recordings are kind of cool. You know, because it was kind of amateurish, but yet with a world-class pianist. So I just ordered his complete Vox and Turnabout recordings. Because I just would rather hear the music that way. I think it's just kind of cool. You know, it's kind of amateurish. It's interesting. Philips is, if you look, Philips is the creme de la creme. That's the expensive stuff. In classical music, I don't know how much you know about it. I didn't know a lot about it either until about 6 months ago. I've been reading quite a bit and stuff, and that is, you know, classical music is interesting. It's kind of been deemed like a rich and educated person's music, which is to a degree true, because it's so much different than just, you know, turning on a radio and listening to it. But what makes people popular is their interpretation, like a Beethoven, Mozart, Schumann, any of these guys. And the ones that really get decent money for their work are the people that somehow, like just like sports or writers or poets or anything else, people have felt that their interpretation was the most accurate ever. I'll tell you something I'm surprised about, and that is that, you know, over 70 years that music isn't copyrightable. Well, that's another thing that's kind of got a gray area. Now, that means that you could go and get Beethoven's number 5, and you could replay the exact thing, and you could upload it to YouTube, and you could copyright it because it's your interpretation of his written music. And on all those CDs, I got all 1,100. I've tried a few just for the hell of it, and I'll tell you that song recognition software catches them within 2 seconds. It's weird. I don't know how they do it. It isn't like they have to listen to half an album or half a song or half a piano piece, and they bang on that piano 2 or 3 times. That thing matches that song, and it matches it perfectly. It's not like it's guessing on who is the artist for this. I'm not kidding you. You know, because the titles are rather long on some of this classical music, and you'll hear like 5 notes in the piano, and bang, it'll show the guy, the symphony, when it was done, which Beethoven song it was, and you're not allowed to use that. It's copyrighted material. It's whoever did its interpretation of whoever they played. So you can't use any of it for YouTube videos. It's pretty interesting. Yeah, I find Augusta's got a symphony. Now they have one coming up Thursday and Friday. It's they play the music to the original Star Wars movie, which I'm not really a Star Wars fan, but I've been thinking about going to it. There's a lot of politics in classical music too. You know, it's like the who's who of the town, the seating. It's a struggle to keep them all operating. Now, I wasn't into opera or classical music when I lived in Detroit, but I did know they had the Detroit Symphony Orchestra, and it seems to me, in the little that I've read, that that's kind of went by the wayside compared to the old days. Now it looks like an organization that has occasional shows with other people. There's not, it's not like Chicago or Cleveland, where you've got a paid staff of musicians. And I'll tell you, like in some of the bigger cities where they have these conductors, these guys make big bucks, like $650, $850 a year. You know, there's some conductors that can't read music too, if you can believe that. I know there's a guy that was a famous professor from Indianapolis. He was a music professor there. He couldn't read music. He could read music, but there was some catch about a big music. I'll have to look that up. You know, it's mostly Jewish-dominated professionals. All the instruments, pretty much. Especially back in the day. Like the late 1800s, early 20s. You know, once again, the culture, education was a discipline. You better be good at it. There's no surprise to me that all the kick-ass majority of musicians, composers, have a Jewish connection of some sort. But I listen to, there's a guy called David Hurwitz. He's got a classical music channel on YouTube. Compared to like other people, his channel like doesn't do that great. He kind of, I don't know why. It's okay, it's interesting. I listen to him. But I looked up a guy last night, and I don't know where he got these, but there are these recordings of these musicians playing different pieces of music. And man, I'll tell you, all of them are like 50 million views, 100 million views, 25 million views. So it's nice to see that there is an appreciation for this stuff out there. Yeah, he actually had a pretty good one of Bremel uploaded. But there's some of these musicians are just phenomenal, man. It doesn't even sound like it's a human playing it. It's so good. Perfect pitch is another interesting subject too. They say Michael Jackson and Elvis Presley had perfect pitch. They could recognize and know right away. Do you have it or you don't? It's not necessary. Most musicians play using relative pitch. So, squirrel coming up. Going over to get a coffee. But I mean, really, you know, in a way, classical music's dead. And back in the opera days, which predated classical music, they did that to be able to, you know, there was a lot of illiteracy, and they used singing in productions to, you know, do plays. They did it singing instead of talking. I was surprised. There was a famous Jewish guy, Zeal, who was the conductor in symphony for years, and he actually converted, the Jewish guy, converted to Catholicism when he moved to Cleveland, and I thought that was interesting. Now, anybody that goes to Cleveland or is familiar with that's big Catholic territory, and I wonder, and I'll probably never know this for sure, why he converted. Whether it was in Rome doing the Romans do type thing, you know, there was still a lot of anti-Semitism around at the time, or did he just feel that was legitimately the way to go? But anyway, he went and these cities used to promote their symphonies. Cleveland was one of them. They travel all over the world, really, playing concerts, you know, paying bills. And he actually got sick up in Anchorage, if you can believe it, Anchorage, Alaska. Cleveland Symphony was up there playing, and then I'm pretty sure he died while he was there. I know that was the last time he played. I would love to like have some kind of publication that really interests me for some reason, I don't know why, on the biography of as many people as possible that ended up in classical music as a career. I mean, you pretty much have to be, as far as I can tell, you pretty much have to be introduced to it at a very young age. You don't see any young kids running around listening to classical music on their own. You know, it's educated, cultured parents like turning them onto it. I dated a girl that was a pathologist in Chicago for a while. Super smart, Polish, crazier than fucking hell. But she got a full ride scholarship for piano. Just super disciplined. Crazy as hell though. Yeah, excellent pianist. The music director at the church where my buddy, the priest, the guy that I talk about a lot in Chicago that died, she was a Juilliard graduate. The music business is interesting, man. It's like anything. It's like there's no certain exact guaranteed way to get there. You can come from money, like Carly Simon did. You know, her dad's the other half of Simon Schuster. You can get lucky like America did and have John Wayne and Bob Hope promote you and have RCA Victor take you under their wing. You can make just shit tons of money and be an underground band that goes big like REM, or you can be really good, be a super songwriter like David Pack from Ambrosia, and barely sell 500,000 albums even though you're on the radio all the time. But I was looking up, like, you know, the way they calculate this and what's considered commercially successful. To me, it seems like people between 500 and a million albums sold, which doesn't seem like much when you look at the statistics of their cut. You can live a pretty good lifestyle. They all seem to be worth about $12 million if they're my age. So, you know, the money keeps rolling in. I mean, you're called a legacy performer. Basically, that's a nice word for an old has-been. Your ship is sailed, and instead of playing arenas, you're playing county fairs and casinos. But there's still great money in it. You're just on the road all the time. You know, when you're filling up 3 days at a casino, at an arena and sounding out like the old days, they called them arena bands, like a band like Journey. You're printing money. It's crazy money. But the county fair and the casino is a hustle. In order to make it worthwhile for the record companies, or you may have got out of your contracts and you're doing your own things now. It's tough to tour on your own without sponsors and even break even. Crazy as it sounds. It's a funny business, man. Music. It's interesting though too. But you know, Michael Jackson talked in his documentary, one of the documentaries. Yeah, I thought Michael Jackson was a super good guy. As it turns out, if you look and you read about producers and engineers in music, they say that was the best overall all-time produced album, Thriller. Yeah, Quincy Jones produced that, and it's really recognized as an industry standard. Michael Jackson was another guy that made crazy money, but he was always talking about how the record companies were screwing him, which is probably true. I know that Limp Bizkit's got a $200 million lawsuit going on right now for their manager and record company screwing them, which is not uncommon. Dirty business. I'm going to go and read down some classical music right now. So have a good day, everybody.